What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into the Grid Studio for another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, as always, alongside Brandon Crosslin. Brandon, how's it going tonight?
All right, Ben. Hope you're doing well as well. It's another good night to be here on Grid Live, Grid Network, and it's a fun show. I'm glad we got this thing going.
Yeah, I'd be doing a little bit better if Doc Rivers gave some better answers in the Sixers press conference last night. But, that's a completely different sport for a completely different time here. Let's get into the motorsport news. Of course, it's a bit of a lighter week again for us with just the Xfinity Series and Camping World Truck Series. So with that in mind, I want to start with something that has been hotly debated on social media the last week or so, and that is the length of Cup Series races. This has been a topic of discussion for a while now, with some fans believing that Cup races these days are just too long. And just yesterday morning, two-time K&N Pro Series East winner Chase K retweeted that Cup races should be, in his words, half the distance that they are now. And Cabry's girlfriend and current Camping World Truck Series driver Hailie Deegan then quoted Cabry's tweet and said, "Think about it. As a driver, you're not going to sit and ride for half the race if the length is shorter. Nothing happens during most Cup races till the last stage for that reason. Also, if you want younger fans to take interest, you have to keep in mind their attention span is shorter." And she then added, also, in my opinion, a lot of people don't have 4 hours, 36 times a year to spend watching a race on TV. So, Brandon, I'll pass this over to you now. Should Cup Series races be shorter? If so, by how much? Should there be a time limit? What's your take on the whole situation?
It's a very shaky topic, Ben, so I'm not going to be too opinionated on it because I haven't really been following it on the Twitter sphere, the Hailie Deegan and Chase back and forth there. But I think it's a shaky ground to say that just all of a sudden that NASCAR Cup races should just be half the distance that they are now, because you have to think about this not only for a TV perspective, but also for the fan experience being there at the racetrack. I don't think we want to cut the experience that we're giving to fans now that they're paying a high ticket price for. And also, you have to look at the idea of if you cut the Cup race in half, then we have to look down at the lower levels, Xfinity and Truck, the things that we cover here on Grid Live Encore. They're going to be either the same distance as the Cup Series events or longer, and that's not a good idea either. And if you're going to cut them down proportionately, then there's going to be like no laps at all in the Truck Series races most nights. Now, I also don't like the idea of seeing the target demographic and how they kind of Gen Z or whatever, and how they kind of respond to media nowadays. And the consensus is, they just have a short attention span. And so therefore, to be profitable and to be a marketable sport, we have to also shorten our events so that more kids will watch us. I don't think that's how you should work society. And this goes for a lot of other things too. I think if they don't have the time to enjoy the sport for 4 hours, I mean, you're not going to be watching it for 4 hours. Are you kidding? Do you watch an entire Baltimore Orioles game for 4 hours? I mean, you might from start to finish. Okay, you might from start to finish. But for me, my Braves, I mean, do I watch that the whole time? Probably not. But, it's more about the fan experience there at the event itself, I think. And they're getting the full ticket price for that. And also, you have to look at the history of these events. Most of them are for the Cup Series. They're all 500 or 400 miles. They're marquee events. Of course, we've just manipulated the Martinsville race this past weekend to be Blue Emu 400, which I'm actually kind of okay with, because with it being the night race under the lights, you don't want people to stay up as long. I kind of get the reasoning behind that.
I think if there was ever a time where fans were okay with a shorter Martinsville race, it was the Cup Series race this weekend.
Yeah, but, and I was kind of skeptical with that at first, and it turned out to be okay. But this sort of just all or none kind of mentality of just cutting the whole schedule. We may sound like old farts here, but I think you need to take a step back. I don't know where this thought came from, or why this came up to Chase or Hailie's mind, but maybe take a step back, think about it. And also, my overall consensus is if younger kids don't feel like watching it for 4 hours because their attention span is not there, then they probably don't need to be watching it. It may just not be for them.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a good point about baseball, because I think that's a sport where a lot of people have been trying to find ways to speed up games. And, they're talking about a pitch clock now and the ghost runner and extra innings and the new intentional walk rule. And those are all things that I'm not a fan of. I think there are ways that we can try to look at speeding up the game without fundamentally changing how the game is played. And when you look at the NASCAR side of things, I think actually some of the things that they've done, namely stage racing, adding in 2 planned caution periods that I think a lot of times are much longer than they need to be, considering most of the time there's no incident to clean up or anything like that. I think that's something that we should look at instead of, cutting the race difference here. And, baseball similarly, I don't think very many people are expected to watch all 162 games of a season. You don't see them talking about shortening the games to 7 innings instead of 9 innings because the fans over there have too short attention spans. I think you can look at the double headers and the 7-inning double headers there and the response that they've gotten. A lot of fans don't like that. So, it's not just a NASCAR thing, but I think, in terms of a NASCAR side of things, you talk about half the distance, you're getting into Formula One length, you're getting into, like you said, times where the Xfinity race is that would be a companion race there would be longer than half the distance of the Cup race. So, that's something that we need to consider as well. We have some comments coming in here from the Martinsville weekend, and our own Adam Lemery says, I've been to Martinsville when it was 500 laps in the fall. I think, again, Martinsville was probably one of the tracks that we didn't need to be focusing on when it comes to the race length debate. I think, most fans were pleased with a 500 lapper there. We have another one of our regulars, Amber, here saying, hey, we went to Martinsville and the race was too long and boring. Love the hot dogs, though. I think everybody can agree with the last part of that there. I am curious, though, are you talking about Martinsville just this past weekend, or are you talking about another time you went there? Because I think that would maybe change how I read the comment, because, looking at the Jeff Gluck poll, I think it was the 3rd lowest yes response that he's ever gotten in the 6 years now it's been that he's been running the poll. So a lot of fans not happy with the Cup race. Our own Kobe Lambeth says, I think some Cup races, not all, could be shortened a bit, maybe by 5 to 10%. But half the distance might be going a little too far. I cover endurance racing, so I have no issue with longer races. And I think, a lot of NASCAR fans have been using this argument as well. Part of the NASCAR experience has historically been, endurance, and not just to the Coke 600. I remember growing up as a fan, engine failures were a little bit more common than they are now. I think the technology has gotten a lot better over the last several years, but, I think that is part of a draw for some people. And when you shorten the race, you take that aspect away. Amber says 500 to 400 is not a big change, but I am happy it was 400 yesterday. And again, I completely agree. I think a lot of fans were certainly glad that was over. We've got a very active chat here tonight. Our own Joe Samniego as well coming in here saying, I prefer races between 2.5 hours and only major events hit the 3 hours and more length. Don't shorten Daytona 500, Southern 500, or Coke 600. Well, I think those are non-negotiable. I think even the ones that are on the side of shortening some of these races here, even they're acknowledging, look, we can't touch the crown jewels. Those are special. Those numbers mean something, even though with overtime, sometimes we touch the numbers at the end of those races, but that's a debate for another day. Kobe saying, remember when Pocono was a 500-mile race? And this, I think, we'll draw it all back here to what my argument would be. Pocono, absolutely, I think, was one of those tracks where, 500 miles to race, you could argue that fans sitting, baking in the sun for 4 hours, maybe we could stand to bring that down to 400 miles. The Texas races being 500 miles, I don't think very many fans were complaining when one of those races went to 400, or, if we took the second race down to 400, that's not a very popular track to begin with. And Talladega as well. I think, when you consider a lot of the race is a single file procession and guys just wanting to try to get to the end of the race, you can look at that race and say, does Talladega really need to be 500 miles? Do we need to be wasting that many laps when a lot of times the drivers just take it easy anyway? But, I think for the most part, you don't want to be going much shorter than 400. And Kobe mentioned 5 to 10%. You go from 5 to 400, that's 20%. I think anything lower than that, really starts to be getting into a danger zone where you're talking about Cup races that are hardly any longer than an Xfinity race. And I don't think that should be the case.
I'm starting to look like a mug shot now, so I may just take my camera off. I don't know why it's doing that, but
I can hear you just fine, so that's
fine. We'll just keep it here. Yeah, I don't understand, and I don't understand where this might go. This kind of mentality might go. I'm afraid that it may just end up. I mean, where do they want this to go? Do they want this to be like things that are not races that aren't crown jewel races? Do they want them to be 20 lap sprints per stage? Is this what we want? Is this what the younger crowd wants? I mean, that might be stretching it too, but I just don't. I don't. I'm kind of apprehensive because I don't know where the next generations are going to want to take this.
Yeah, well, and you brought up a good point as well, but just before we came on, if you shorten the cup races, I think by scale, it doesn't make any sense to have an Xfinity race that's longer than a cup race unless, one track wanted to try to start a new tradition or something and kind of make that their thing. I don't see that happening though. So if the cup race gets shortened, I would think by extension, you have to shorten the Xfinity or truck companion races if those are applicable situations. And, you're talking about, would I think a truck race at Pocono would maybe only have 6 or 8 laps in a stage. We can't be getting to that point where the stage lengths are that short and the races are that short there. So, I think this has a bunch of ripple effects, and it's always important to consider, you can't just make your case and, not think about all the effects that it's going to have all throughout the rest of the sport. I think a lot of fans on both sides of the argument are maybe doing that here, I think, as I do a lot of times, I come down somewhere in the middle. I think there are certain tracks that maybe we could stand to shorten it from 500 to 400, but I think a lot of those tracks have already done it. Pocono is a perfect example there. They used to do 500 miles at Dover back in the day. That's crazy to me, growing up in an era where that race has always been 400 laps and 400 miles. We have some more chat comments coming in here. Amber clarifying, I guess it was this weekend, first time too. And unfortunately, probably the last time. I'd maybe encourage you to give it another chance here. I think first race with a next gen car, they're going to have to iron some things out here. I also don't know about the fact that maybe Martinsville shouldn't be a night race in April. Maybe it's still too cold this time of year for the fan experience. So that's something to consider as well. Adam mentioning Amber needs to go and head to Bristol. Yeah, that's certainly a track that is on my bucket list as well. Joe bringing up something that I brought up as well. Dover used to be 500. That was more brutal with the old cars, and survival was key. And again, that goes back to what we talk about with the World 600, the Coca-Cola 600. I think endurance is a popular aspect of this sport as well, and that's something that people don't want to lose. Amber brings up a race that I've been to, actually, Formula E at Brooklyn. I went in 2017. Of course, highly recommend that one as well. And Adam says when NASCAR goes to Loudon, New Hampshire, it's a 300-mile race. That's a good distance. And I agree there. I think Loudon is a flat track, obviously. The lap times are shorter than, Dover, even though they're both a mile in length. So I think it makes sense that Dover's 400 and Loudon's 300 because, when you factor in the variables there, you get about the same amount of time. And Kobe adding in here, yes, Amber, give it another chance. There's a chance they'll put on an entirely different show in the fall with changes and lessons learned. And again, I would argue the weather as well. I think that's something that is worth considering there. So, Brandon, do you have any final thoughts here before we go into our race recaps?
Yeah, just final word. Just don't make change just for the sake of change. I feel like that's kind of what happens with a lot of younger thought. And I mean, I think we used to think like that too. When we had ideas about how we could improve the sport at a younger age. I don't know. And I mean, we're still young here, but it just, to me, when I first heard that, I just thought it was something that just came out of a NASCAR Reddit post or something like that. Just some weird pipe dream, and I don't mean to sound rude, but it just sounded ridiculous. And, but I see your middle ground, Ben, and I know where you would like to reason that out, and where some things that are 500 that should be 400 or even less.
Yeah. I think this is one of those things where you can't make a blanket statement and apply it to every track. There was another tweet I saw today that somebody said 400 miles should be the minimum. And I said, well, wait a second now, let's do the math here. We're talking 800 laps at Martinsville. You go into the road course races and short tracks and things like that. We need to be careful when we make statements like that, because again, not every race is the same. And I think there are some races that could maybe stand to be shortened a little bit, but others, obviously, you don't really want to touch. And, I think that's important to consider as well.
Also, just want to take into account just the nature of Twitter too. It's just where you put little blurbs, little thoughts,
Yeah.
So we can't credit to Hailie Deegan and her significant other. We can't take their thoughts like they're like thoughts from like Adam Stern, a Stern bomb or something. We have to take it as just little thoughts, little tweets. That's all it is.
Well, and in fairness, Deegan, I think, was getting a lot of hate, on Twitter and everything, and people were saying this is a disgraceful take from somebody who's supposed to be the future of a sport, and we don't condone that either. Obviously,
No.
you have to keep it respectful. It's very hard to detect tone over text and on social media, so that's another thing to consider as well. So just be nice. I know it's asking a lot for the internet and for social media, unfortunately, but everybody do your best. Let's have a conversation. Let's welcome opposing viewpoints, and let's see, if we can try to open each other's minds and at least understand why we believe what side we're coming down on here before we cast any judgment on opinions that we maybe don't share. Amber as well. One final word here on Martinsville. Was cool, but easier to see. Other races and series and hotels near Martinsville were expensive. Yeah, well, that's something that I think maybe isn't in NASCAR's control as much as they'd like, but maybe they see it as an opportunity to jack up the hotel prices when a major event like that comes to town. Joe giving you a compliment there, Brandon. That's good to see. I'm glad to see some of our colleagues here in the chat tonight. Kobe adding, yeah, social media isn't representative of the full picture on any given topic. Absolutely. And Amber saying, bet if Chase Elliott said shorter races, his fans would support it.
Nah, I don't know about, some of the diehards that don't really know what they're doing, yes. But I think some casual Chase Elliott fans, like maybe I used to be, would still find the voice of reason.
Yeah. Well, I do think there are some fans out there that maybe could get persuaded by, the opinion of a driver that they have the most affinity for. But I do think I would hope most people would at least try to separate those emotions there and not let that get in the way. So, certainly an interesting topic of debate here. I'm sure it's not going to die down anytime soon. We just wanted to address it here on our show, and that's that. So let's get into the race recap here. And in the truck series, we've got another recurring debate that we come back to here. Cup drivers in the lower divisions. Cup driver beats a former Cup driver who finished ahead of a current Cup driver to win the truck race. Truly inspiring stuff at Martinsville on Thursday night. But it was another victory for William Byron in the truck series. I think it's his 8th career win, but first for Spire Motorsports. So cool little story there for that team. Obviously, a lot of Hendrick backing with HendrickCars.com being on the truck this weekend. Byron, of course, later backed this up with a win in the Cup race as well. Kyle Busch continued his string of podium finishes in the truck series by coming in 3rd, and splitting the two active Cup Series drivers was Johnny Sauter, back with ThorSport for the first time this season. Sauter finished 2nd, but ruffled some feathers along the way, at one point putting Hailie Deegan into the wall. Deegan also seemed unhappy with her former teammate in the K&N Pro Series West, Lawless Allen. The two of them were seen discussing a separate incident after the race. You can see Deegan and Allen finished 19th and 20th, respectively. Sauter is running part-time this year between ThorSport and G2G. He is still looking for his first win since Dover 2019. That's almost 3 years ago at this point. So after a rough season opener at Daytona, did Johnny Sauter prove that he can still compete at a high level?
Yeah, it seems like he did. As a good second place finish at Martinsville, that's not really easy to do, especially with Kyle Busch and William Byron in the field. But it actually was not really a good look to be having that mess up with Hailie Deegan, kind of pushing her out of the way. As Michael Waltrip said when he saw that on TV, he said that's not fair. And I agree with Mikey. That didn't really look fair. I don't know if he intended that as a hasteful move, or if that was just that's where the slot needed to be filled at that time. But either way, I think Johnny Sauter is going to have to be a little more respectful now that he's not a full-time member of the Truck Series. He's more of a visitor now whenever he comes in. So he's going to have to not ruffle feathers, be a little nicer, and maybe try to give some respect to some of the other full-time members of the Truck Series now that he's no longer one.
Yeah, I think that's important for Johnny to consider. And I think that's been a criticism of him, really over his entire career, is that sometimes he's a little too aggressive Jim Sauter Jr. also a little too aggressive on Twitter, I think. That was kind of interesting, the little spat that he got into with Danny B Talks. And I think a little unfortunate because Danny B wasn't even going after Johnny, and Johnny took the blame for the incident with Hailie Deegan as well. So I wish Jim would have stayed out of that, but we don't need to get too far into that discussion there.
Completely uncalled for.
Yeah, completely uncalled for. Absolutely. But I agree. I think Johnny is obviously he's a champion of a truck series, and we know he knows how to drive a race car or a race truck in this case, and it's good to see him running back up front because, like I said, it's been a while since he won a race, and he almost had a shot to do it Thursday night. So we'll see. I'm not sure how many opportunities he's going to get throughout the rest of the season. I know he's splitting time with a team that he's used to with ThorSport and a team in G2G that's obviously on a much smaller budget and a much younger team. I think if he's going to be competing for wins in top fives and top tens, it's probably going to come with his ThorSport opportunities. So we'll see what happens there. Joe chiming back in on the hotel situation for Amber. Hotels will always raise rates for big events. Absolutely. NASCAR weekend in Portland is at the same time as the Rose Festival, and prices are going up already. Amber chiming in on the truck race. The truck race was so much fun and met Parker Kligerman. So that sounds like a good weekend. I got to say, I like Parker Kligerman a lot, not just as a driver, but as a broadcaster. I think he's doing great work now for NBC. I saw him doing the kind of hosting the MotoGP broadcast, which, for somebody that's still trying to make a career out of driving side of things, to be branching out and doing this many things for NBC, not just on the NASCAR side of things, I think is very cool. And I think he's doing a great job in that role. Kobe saying, I'm sure Sauter is glad to be in a competitive truck again. His Daytona ride was painful. Absolutely. Couldn't be more on opposite ends of the spectrum there with what happened to him at Daytona. I think the ThorSport equipment is certainly a lot more capable of allowing him to get a good finish. And of course, Jim Sauter crossed the line. It's okay to disagree with someone, but personal insults like fat shaming someone is wrong. Absolutely. Like we said, completely uncalled for there. Danny B, we have your back in the unlikely event that you're watching this right now, but we're totally on your side there. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Amber saying, agree, Kobe, and why the American flags? Yeah, I guess this is talking about Sauter's tweets again. I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people associate those kind of things when they want to act that sort of way.
He's a proud American. I guess it makes you feel like you're emphasizing your point. But I don't know. We don't need to waste any more time on Jim Sauter Jr.'s tweets there. That's not something I want to get too deep into.
Give it the light of day.
Yeah. Sometimes it's best to just ignore that stuff as much as you can. But I did think, when talking about Johnny, it was important that we at least make sure we don't condone that, but not dwell on it either. Let's get back to Hailie Deegan here a little bit. Somebody that we've been talking about on this program. It's been a very disappointing start to the year. And, she's fallen into a point where, we have even had to worry about her so much as qualifying for these races. She's so far back in the points. But she did bring home a top 20 on Thursday night, which she desperately needed given her situation in the point standings right now. So we head to Bristol Dirt this weekend. And I know she has an extensive dirt racing background before she made the transition to stock cars. I don't know how much that's going to help her because, she doesn't have too much experience in a truck on dirt, and Bristol Dirt, isn't exactly your traditional dirt track either, but maybe it does give her a slight edge in some ways. What do you think is a reasonable expectation for her as she looks to get her season back on track?
Yeah, before I give my expectation from Deegan, I want to talk about Martinsville with Deegan a little bit. The thumbnail, I think, for the highlights for the trucks was her and Lawless Allen. And but all we saw really on TV was her bit with Johnny Sauter. And so I was wondering, when did Lawless Allen come into play? Why is she mad at him? And then you hear from other fans on Twitter exactly what went down. He was just beating all over the back of Hailie Deegan's truck all race long, it seems. And
I will say, right before we came on the show, Hailie did publish her Martinsville vlog on her YouTube channel, and she does have an angle that shows what happened with the contact with Lawless Allen on track. So if anybody's interested for more information on that situation, and it also had a different angle of the conversation as well, which was kind of interesting. You could hear what she was saying to Lawless. And remember, those two do have a history. They were teammates briefly in K&M West, and Deegan got into Allen at Sonoma in 2019 and ended up ending his race there. Amber with the play on words there. He was lawless. I guess you could say that.
I don't know how you get to the point where you name your child Lawless, but here we are. But anyway, looking at Bristol Dirt for Hailie Deegan, I really enjoyed her K&N win back in the day with Las Vegas Dirt. It was Las Vegas, correct?
Well, she won 3 races, but that was she got one of the wins on the dirt track there. She won the pole in 18 and then got the win in 19. So,
well, looking at that,
she's
got heavy machinery on dirt experience. Check. So bring the trucks to Bristol Dirt. It's a lot more banking this year, it seems, than last year's Bristol adventure on dirt. And also it's going to be at night. And so this, I'd say maybe a top 15 is nothing too hard to attain, but you're going to have to keep her place in line and keep out of trouble, and also might have to be a little aggressive if things get shaky there in the last stage. But hopefully she can get a top 15. I'm hoping more that she'll get a really impressive day, maybe even a top 5. But things really have to go her way in that one truck.
Yeah, well, she finished in the top 20 last year. So, coming back for your second race of the track, I think you can always expect to improve a little bit. I got to say, I really don't think top 15 is unreasonable. I think anything less is probably going to be a disappointment. Mm-hmm. And I would go so far as to say I wouldn't be shocked if she finishes in the top 10. I think that's not an unreasonable goal for her either. Top 5, I think, she's probably going to need some intervention and luck to go her way, and maybe something ahead of her. But yeah, I think, I think it would be great, obviously, for her situation on points, and that would be, a total momentum boost for her. But I think top 10 to 15 is a little bit more reasonable with the expectations that we can have for, given how her season's gone so far. Amber saying, a question my husband and I chatted that night: if Deegan slapped Lawless, does Lawless or crew fight back? I think absolutely not. Obviously, you have to respect the fact that Deegan is a woman, and I think that would get very, very ugly if somebody wanted to step in there. Of course, we did see a fight Friday night, which we'll get into here a little bit, but that's not even I don't think that's anything you can even consider doing. I remember that actually brings up some memories of Danica Patrick and the late great Dan Weldon at Milwaukee several years ago. That was a situation where Danica kind of shoved Dan, and they were joking on PTI the next day on ESPN, like, if she had been a man, would there have been anything that had gone any further? But again, a similar situation there. Obviously, that's not something I think you can even consider doing, because that would be an awful, awful look if anything escalated there.
My mind goes to Danica Patrick and Denny Hamlin having a conversation.
That too. Yeah. Forgot about that one.
She could have very well slapped Denny there and been totally justified, just walked away.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the fight that actually did happen. The Xfinity Series recap here. So it was Brandon Jones who we do want to give credit where it's due to the race winner. Brandon Jones won the race, but it was, as he's done all year on this program and on social media, it was Ty Gibbs who was the one that stole the headlines. Gibbs led the most laps and was in a heated battle for yet another win with his teammate Jones, but ended up falling back into a battle with Sam Mayer on the final lap. Gibbs and Mayer were both eligible for the $100,000 Dash for Cash bonus, but the battle ended with Mayer making contact with Gibbs, putting him in the wall and allowing AJ Allmendinger to come through with a third place finish for the Dash for Cash prize. Mayer ended up 5th, while Gibbs fell back to 8th. And after the checkered flag, Gibbs rammed into the back of Mayer's car before the two confronted each other on pit road, and a fight broke out between the two drivers and their crews. When Gibbs punched Mayer before he took his helmet off, Mayer had already removed his helmet when Gibbs threw the punch. So, Brandon, what's your reaction to the fight, and did Ty Gibbs take things a step too far?
My first reaction to that mess up was disappointment. All year long and all last year, I've really been rooting for Ty Gibbs, being the young newcomer who's got a solid Christian background, and to see that kind of thing just go completely awry and get into the fight and start. He's the one that starts the punches and he keeps his helmet on. Now, I didn't know if he had difficulty getting the helmet off, if he had any intentions of getting his helmet off to fight or before. But all that aside, it's wrong for both of them to start that kind of fight at the end of the race. And just I'm had the same reaction as Joe Gibbs. Very disappointed.
Yeah, well, I got to say, people were saying, I think Ty Gibbs fans in particular, we complain all the time that drivers don't have personality, and then Ty Gibbs starts a fight with Sam Mayer, and everybody's all upset, and they say Ty, shouldn't have done that and everything, and they're criticizing Ty for showing character and showing emotion. I think there are ways to show character and show emotion without physically attacking somebody and, creating dangerous situations. I mean, for a official, I think was carried out on a stretcher, right? Things got so ugly in that fight there. So, you obviously can't be doing stuff like that. And also obviously not a good look to punch somebody who's taking his helmet off before you've taken your own helmet off and still have the protection that provides. So you did bring up a good point. We do have to, in complete fairness, consider, did Ty Gibbs get a chance to take his helmet off or anything? But, the fact that it was on, whether he had difficulty getting it off or not, whether he wanted to get it off or not, that's still, that doesn't erase that it's not a good look for a guy wearing a helmet to punch a guy, regardless of whether he's still wearing a helmet or not. But, Sam Mayer took a pretty good lick to the eye there. And that was pretty disappointing to see, especially considering, like you said, Ty Gibbs has been very outspoken about his Christian faith. And I think that's great. But, it does make you kind of look like a hypocrite when, you've been racing people hard all year and then it finally happens to you. And this is how you respond. My bigger problem, I don't have a problem so much with drivers, having those discussions outside of the race car. And, I don't love seeing the fights myself, but frankly, I'll take that over fights on the track and doing things with your race cars on the cool down lap. So that was my biggest issue with everything, was when Ty, rammed him on the cool down lap. Sometimes drivers might be, in the process of loosening their belts or things like that, even though maybe they're not supposed to. You never know what the situation is there. So anytime you do something with your car, I think you have the opportunity to do a lot more damage than just getting out of the race car, having a conversation face-to-face, man-to-man. So that was my problem with that whole situation. Amber says she got video of the fight. I think I'd certainly be curious to see some other angles of that. Love it, and I hope Sam gets Ty back again. Well, I think that's something that Ty is going to have to be on the lookout for, because he's been somebody that has dished it out quite a few times this season. But, if Friday night's any indication, he doesn't seem to be able to take it back super well. So maybe that's something that he needs to work on there. She also says, we started yelling daddy's money at Gibbs. We'll get into this here in a second as well. But of course, as impressive as Ty has been, he does have that going for him. His last name obviously gave him a foot in the door, and he has a lot of backing from Monster and a few other companies as well. Kobe says 2 young kids going for $100,000. AJ Allmendinger slipped by and stole it while they went up the hill. So no surprise to see tempers flare. Plus Gibbs and Mayer have history of conflict. Yes, they do. Amber saying there's an Applebee's near Martinsville by the Hampton Inn. Anybody who gets this reference, you're a real one. I'm assuming this is a reference to Mike Harmon a couple of years ago on Twitter. The Applebee's down by Crawford Road or whatever that was. Applebee's did sponsor him earlier in his time owning a race team, but that might be a good place to stage a fight. The Applebee's parking lot. We can do some advertising for that. I guess we should move on to another point Amber brought up here. Ty Gibbs is obviously the grandson of Joe Gibbs, and Joe Gibbs still had a car that won the race, and yet when they panned to Joe Gibbs after Brandon Jones crossed the line, it wasn't exactly a mood of celebration on the JGR owner's face. So were you surprised at how Joe Gibbs reacted to the whole situation, considering one of his cars still ended up going on to win the race?
Absolutely not. We've known Coach Joe Gibbs long enough, at least from the onlooker perspective. Whenever he has a driver that wins the race, at all other points he would be excited, shaking people's hands and all that sort of stuff. But you wouldn't even have known that Brandon Jones won the race the way that Coach Gibbs' expression was. Just he knew that not only his driver had been he was not only in driver mode, he was in grandfather mode. He knew his driver's reputation had been tainted, but also his grandson's reputation has been tainted just a bit, and that may also reflect on Joe Gibbs Racing a little bit as well. And I think he's just more looking at this as the character of my grandson is at stake, and also I think we need to take in consideration if we were that young, we probably would have done something stupid like that too. So Ty is still incredibly young. That doesn't excuse him from this kind of behavior. It doesn't excuse Sam Mayer either, but they're young drivers. They're going to make stupid mistakes, and they'll probably look back at this 10 years later and think, man, we were stupid kids out there in the truck series or in the Xfinity series back then. Look at that.
Yeah, well, I think that's important to remember as well. I'm just trying to do some math in my head here because Mayer was born in summer of 2003, I think. So he's still 18 and Gibbs is obviously only 19. So we're literally talking about two teenagers here getting into this fight.
High school football, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, when teenagers getting involved, I think I'm a lot less surprised that it escalated like that than, two 30 or 40-year-olds, like when Jeff Gordon got into it with Clint Boyer all those years ago, that's something that maybe raises a few more eyebrows than, a couple of teenagers.
Now that was real.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
He was on a mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I still have those. I think NASCAR Chasm was saying like Boyer should go to the Olympic trials for the 100-meter dash. He was so angry when that whole thing went down.
He needs to do that run again, that same route.
Yeah. I know Fox got McMurray out there to run the Coliseum track. They should have gotten Boyer out there as well, see if he still had it in him. Kobe says, I think Ty Gibbs is going to be a superstar in Cup, but there's still work to do with some immaturity. But many young drivers have the same issue. I completely agree. I think as much as, Ty Gibbs has been showing flashes of brilliance and superstar potential, I think that's something that all drivers have to go through. And also we have to remember, Gibbs is kind of going the old-fashioned route. They used to call it the ABCs, going from ARCA to Busch to Cup. Now Busch Series is the Xfinity Series, but he skipped right over the Truck Series development ladder. So he's made rapid progression at a very young age, and I think deservedly so. You look at what he did in the ARCA Series. There was no sense in him, continuing to log laps there and win races, and lap 90% of the field. I think it was absolutely a time for him to move up at least to trucks, let alone to Xfinity, what he's done. But he does have to work on getting his emotions in check a little bit. But that's true, I think, of everybody. When you're still in your late teens and into your early 20s, everybody has to go through that. Amber asks, who will he replace? Truex? I guess this is talking about when Ty moves to Cup. I've got to think Ty probably has at least one more year in Xfinity after this, unless he wins 10 to 15 races en route to a championship, which I guess he's on pace to do maybe, but I would still venture a guess that he's probably going to spend at least 2 years in Xfinity. I think it's easy to forget Truex is getting up there, in his early 40s now. So I don't know how much longer he's got. And I know drivers have been stepping away a little bit earlier than they have historically speaking. And Kobe, came back and said MTJ could be one of the next JGR drivers out, but who knows?
Or Busch.
Yeah, maybe 2311 could be a destination there. I think Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin probably have aspirations to make that more than just a 2-car team. They're probably looking to expand at some point to be a 4-car team. I'm sure Michael Jordan would be happy to have that. So there could be expanded opportunities for Toyota there. I think that's important as well. Toyota has so many young development drivers, but really up until this year, only 5 spots to place them in when they get to Cup. Now they have a 6 with 2311 expanding. So that is something to consider as well. I think Ty certainly is going to be in the Cup Series one day, but where's there room for him in the Toyota stable to move up? Because you got to assume he's going to be driving for a Gibbs car. I think it's a little early in his career to do what Ty Dillon's done and go off and leave the family team to go race for somebody else. Amber adding, be sweet to see a third 2311 car. Completely agree there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, were you gonna say something else, Brandon?
Oh, well, I was thinking about it, but I might be mean, so I won't.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes, we have to keep our own emotions in check here as well here at Grid Network. So let's move on. Talk about everybody's favorite perennial most popular driver coming back to do his one-off. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished 11th in his annual return to the Xfinity Series, and he did state on social media after the race that he does intend on doing another Xfinity race in 2023. So I'll pose the question to you, Brandon. What track would you like to see Dale Jr. run next season?
I'd like to see him come to Tennessee because I think he's already hit all his favorites. He likes to get those really good racetracks. He's already got Homestead, Miami, check, Darlington, check, Richmond, check. Martinsville, check. He's kind of got all the short tracks covered unless he wants to go to New Hampshire. And I don't see why. I mean, it's a great track, but I just don't see why what the appeal might be for Junior. Who knows? He may enjoy that, or possibly. I mean, the only ones remaining, if he thinks it's safe, would be Bristol or Nashville Superspeedway. Nashville being the newer venue. Well, not really a new, but just a returning venue for the Xfinity Series. And also, you and I talked before the show. A big, absolutely yes, would be if whenever the Nashville Fairgrounds comes back to the calendar, or certainly if North Wilkesboro came back to the calendar, because he's been a instrumental figure there, not only getting it cleaned off for the scanning on iRacing, but also just for the future vitality of that track itself.
Yeah, I think, obviously he's not going to do a Daytona or Talladega, with the concussion concerns and, the potential for big impacts there. I do see it being a track on the shorter side, although he did do Homestead, which is 1.5 miles. So that's something that maybe he would consider doing. But I completely agree. If the Nashville Fairgrounds gets back on the schedule, you can pencil him on the entry list, the day they announce it. I'm sure that he will be there. And, North Wilkesboro as well. I think, we've been talking a little bit before we came on the air. I'd like to get an update on how that's doing, because we're hearing more and more rumors about big plans that they have for the future of that track. I'm getting a little anxious. I feel like it's been a little while since we got an update there. So I think, it'd probably be a stretch of a start to say Xfinity is going to come there. I think they're probably thinking more like ARCA East or ARCA Maine or the Truck Series, in the future for that track immediately. But who knows if it's successful, if they can build the infrastructure around it. I'm sure there would certainly be, there's a large vocal portion of the fan base that would love the Cup Series to come back. I don't know that we're ever going to get to that point, but you got to start small, I think, in the comeback here, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Another pipe dream for me would be Rockingham, to see Dale Jr. come back to the Rock. If Xfinity could just get that a date, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
The problem with Rockingham is they tried that already in 2012, and in 2013 the attendance had already dropped dramatically from truck race, and then it fell off the calendar again. I'd love to see it come back too, but it is something that you have to consider. Everybody says they'd love to see it come back. We need them to actually support the race.
But they don't pay for the tickets
when it happens. Yeah, exactly. Which is easier said than done, to be fair. I don't necessarily have, the means to just drop everything and go travel, to a different part of the country for a weekend, on such short notice. That's not something that everybody in the country can do, but the local fans, that's something that they need to do to support their home track. If that's something that, they're vocal about on social media, they're vocal about, in discussions with what they'd like to see happen with the sport, you've got to show up and make it happen.
Well, if anywhere, it should happen in North Carolina, with it being basically the biggest market for NASCAR viewership. They should be supporting those local tracks if they ever come back to the national calendar.
That's true. Yeah, they are in a good market, so they do have that going for them. All right. Well, you brought up something to my attention shortly before we came on the air. One final question here before we get into the end of our show. Spire have brought in some Cup Series ringers the last couple of weeks with Alex Bowman and William Byron. They're teasing a driver reveal for the truck race at Bristol Dirt tomorrow. Or the reveal is going to come tomorrow. Obviously, the race is this weekend. Who do you think it might be? Do you think they're trying to hit the cycle with Hendrick drivers? It might be Larson or Elliott, or do you think it's going to be a dirt track specialist? What do you think's behind the messaging there?
I think with the Hendrick backing, they have no choice but to get a Hendrick driver. Now, it would be a big surprise if they got some dirt great out there, but I think they're going to go with the Hendrick camp. And here is your graphic. There's the silhouette of the driver in question, and it's like a darkened 7. So with the roundness of the head, my guess would be that it's going to be Chase Elliott in an A-Shock energy drink truck scheme for Bristol. And the second guess would be Kyle Larson in a HendrickCars.com scheme. But with that number 7, I'm going to have to go with Chase Elliott.
I got to say, I want to be excited for this race weekend, but, same thing we went through, last season. There's so many Cup drivers coming into the truck race, and we had a ringer win last year with Martin Truex Jr. I mean, it was cool that he added his name to the guys that have won in all 3 series, but there were so many Cup drivers in the truck race last year, and, we're shaping up for even more announcements the week leading up to the race. So, that's something that, I think is a little disappointing. People know where I stand on that issue. Other people probably love seeing the Cup guys come down, but, we could spend another hour on that debate alone. I know we're not going to. What I want to get into to close the show here, Brandon, give me your one shining moment again. It doesn't have to be from Xfinity or trucks. You can include Cup as well. What was the one thing that stood out to you this weekend?
I guess it would be AJ Allmendinger getting that $100,000 with the Dash for Cash.
Yeah, I got to say, AJ's off to a great start to the year. He kept that top 10 streak going as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that as the season carries on. And I'm actually going to stick with colleague as well and go with Landon Castle. Great to see him have a career best finish. And, I think it's been a long time coming for him. It's great to see him get an opportunity in equipment such as colleague racing. And I've got to think a win is probably just right around the corner for him. But, his second place finish really got lost, I think, in all the craziness of, Brandon Jones winning the race and then what happened with Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer. So I think I want to give him a shout out here, make sure we don't completely omit him from our show. And job well done. And I'm sure that win is coming, like I said. So with that in mind, that is going to do it for another episode of Grid Live Encore. And of course, as always, we want to remind you, forgive me here, it's taking me a little while to pull up the graphics here. There we go. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We've got it all. And of course, subscribe right here on YouTube. If you like what you see, take 5 minutes after the show to invest in Grid Network. Consider joining our Patreon. And of course, thank you to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin. Welcome back, Robin, to our Patreon. Thank you to all of those. And consider joining them and helping keep Grid Network on the air throughout 2022 and beyond. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent, no matter who it is. Any amount will continue to help us grow this motorsports media outlet. And of course, thank you to our friend Ed Hunter from Formula E Zone and Amber, who we saw in the chat tonight, and Zach as well for buying us a coffee already. Thanks again to our sponsor, Public.com, the stock market social media home. Be sure to check them out. The referral code GRIDNET in the link below gives you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Wednesday, we have Grid Tonight with Adam and Kobe, as always. Thursday, Joe and Daniel host Women in Motorsports. We'll see you back here with Grid Live programming on Saturday for the pre-race show, on Sunday with the wrap-up. And actually, now that I think about it, it is Easter weekend, so we might be switching the schedules up a little bit. So just stay tuned on those fronts. We do plan to do an encore show next weekend. I know trucks are going to be at Bristol Dirt. So, again, probably going to be a little bit of a shorter show. But, Brandon, one final word here. Anything you want to add tonight? What are you looking forward to when we get to the dirt track at Bristol?
I'm looking for a better overall Bristol Dirt weekend. Hopefully this banking is going to help things out. And I think they've learned a lot there at the Motor Speedway. And I think having it at night is going to be another advantage as well. Also, one more shining moment. I forgot to mention Grand Prix of Long Beach, Joseph Newgarden. Definitely a big one this weekend, getting his first Long Beach GP. Yeah,
Penske off to a great start on the IndyCar side of things, and completely agree. Hopefully the weather's nice. I think that's something that, again, not necessarily in NASCAR's control, but that really bit them last year. Trucks in particular struggle with the heat races, so hopefully everything is all clear there, and the weekend goes on without any of those problems. So with that in mind, for Brandon Crosslin, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time right here on Grid Network.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on Public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDNET for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on Public.com.